It's Sunday. You know what that means. Today is game number 3 between the Montreal Canadiens and the Buffalo Sabres. Now, I'm gonna be real. I think all the topics that we could have discussed when it comes to this series and the Habs and what they've been doing so far, we've kind of exhausted it all, right? Like yesterday we made a video about the Buffalo Sabres and how Tage Thompson needs to get his act together. Although I'll rephrase that. As a Canadiens fan, I would prefer if he did not get his act together and he continued failing his ballerina act on the ice with all the spins before wiping out. But either way, because we are eagerly awaiting the Montreal Canadiens to play off in Game 3, I wanted to open the show up today with some extra Montreal Canadiens conversation, because in this video, we are diving into an idea that was talked about by David Pagnotta on Jeff Merrick's The Sheet from sometime last week. It talks about one of the potential free agents to be in this year's NHL offseason, and whether or not he could come over to the Montreal Canadiens. Take a look at this tweet. David Pagnotta spoke out regarding Evgeni Malkin's future. If I am surprised, and he does leave the Pittsburgh Penguins, Montreal. I'm curious if that would be one last one, because they've got a couple of Russians out there. I expect him to stay in Pittsburgh, though. The Sheet, May 1st. Now here's the thing about Evgeni Malkin and his entire situation. He is a pending UFA. His contract is $6.1 million a year till the end of this season. It was a short-term deal, only 4 years long. He had signed it back earlier in 2022. And there was some contention from Penguins fans as to whether or not Malkin would leave after this season, if he would stick around, because it was like, hey, he's 39 years old. He's going to be 40 by the time next season begins. His birthday is July 31st, so he's got another year pending on that age chart of his. And normally 40-year-old guys who are free agents in the National Hockey League, they tend not to re-sign all too often. So for Evgeni Malkin, I think a lot of Penguins fans had solidified in their brains the idea that this was it, until the season began and the Pittsburgh Penguins started doing very well. Almost more well than anybody would have ever imagined. Sidney Crosby, amazing. You have Brian Rust and Rickard Rakell, awesome. Evgeni Malkin, Erik Karlsson, total studs. And Chris Letang is not a bum either. You look at the goaltending, Stu Skinner, okay, maybe not necessarily him. But Artur Shilovs is giving a lot to be excited for in the long term. And all of a sudden, the Pittsburgh Penguins put themselves in a spot where they contended for the playoffs. They made it. They lost against Philadelphia. And now you have these veteran dudes like Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and Karlsson expressing interest in potentially returning. But that's the thing. David Pagnotta was speaking out on the idea on if Evgeni Malkin were to become a free agent and not re-sign with the Penguins. If, and I say if, I don't want this to happen, but if there's some sort of a big change in the way the Penguins are projected to be for next season, if some guy randomly retires out of nowhere, if that's one of their older dudes, if there's less of an incentive for Malkin to stick around in Pittsburgh, then the Montreal Canadiens would seem like a really interesting choice for him to go in unrestricted free agency. If anything, I think about some of the other Russian success stories that we have seen out of the Montreal Canadiens. Obviously, there were a number of good ones, and Ivan Demidov's presence on the Habs right now opens the door to some sort of a national camaraderie with a potential guy like Malkin. But honestly, when I think about Russians in Montreal, my brain immediately jumps to a guy like Ilya Kovalchuk, for example, a player that wasn't here for a long time, but he was here for a really, really good time. And there was so much to love out of Ilya Kovalchuk's short stint with the Canadiens. He showed up, he played hard, he scored some beautiful goals, he got hyped up, he helped Nick Suzuki, who was a rookie in that time span, And then he got traded for draft picks, and everything was perfect. Like, the Ilya Kovalchuk situation for Montreal in the early 2020s went almost as perfectly as you could have expected it to have gone. And the fact that Ilya Kovalchuk seemed to have exhibited so much legitimate joy as a member of the Montreal Canadiens in that small stint that he had, it really makes me feel like a guy like Malkin could potentially feel similar things. And I'm not saying that Malkin would prefer this over Pittsburgh. I would probably wager a bet and say it's more likely that he sticks around in Pennsylvania, but if we were operating under the assumption that he would leave and that he'd go somewhere else, play the last season of his NHL career in some other organization, why not Montreal? You could help out Ivan Demidov. You can be a part of a young, up-and-coming squad that's got a 100-point scorer in Suzuki, a 50-goal scorer in Caulfield, one of the best offensive defensemen in the game in Lane Hudson, and a guy that could potentially be the next playmaking superstar in Ivan Demidov. Not to mention Juraj Slafkovsky, whose game can really take a lesson or two from Evgeni Malkin. The fact that they're both big forwards who can score, I think there's so much that Slafkovsky could learn from a guy like Evgeni Malkin should they be placed on the same team. If anything, I'd say that Montreal is the best fit for a guy like Evgeni Malkin. They need a center. Oliver Kapanen ain't cutting it. Kirby Dach, while it's true he's been playing so much better as of late in the playoffs, we still haven't seen that level of Dach throughout the course of an 82-game NHL season, so there's room for doubt there. Evgeni Malkin, on the other hand, I mean, yeah, it's true, he didn't play all the games this season either. He only had 56, but he was over a point per game in that stint. Malkin, in his late age, is still able to produce at a really significant capacity, and he is one of the most skilled players of the 2000s and the 2010s, one of the most underrated as well. There's a legacy behind that Montreal Canadiens fans would absolutely latch onto if it were to find itself a spot at the Bell Center. Like, obviously Canadiens fans, they wouldn't necessarily say it's the best idea to sign a 40-year-old guy in free agency to be the second-line center of the team, but if there's a great story attached to it, literally anything is possible for these hockey fanatic Canadian markets. As long as there is a narrative, a story to latch onto, then I'd say it's a pretty good idea. What about you? If it's not Sidney Crosby, is it Evgeni Malkin that finds himself in a Montreal Canadiens sweater post-Pittsburgh Penguins career? Malkin is 39, turning 40. I would assume that the last contract he signs in the NHL is the very last one. I assume he rides off into the sunset shortly after. So if he wants to go out with a bang, if he doesn't think the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be able to be competitive this upcoming season, then maybe it's a fine idea to test the market and see what a Montreal Canadiens Bell Center Ilya Kovalchuk alumni organization can bring for you. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this Evgeni Malkin conversation? David Pagnotta brought it up. He said out of all the teams that were potentially in the mix, maybe Montreal could be that team. Who really knows? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign 9. And bye.